Hello, my dears. Come closer, sit with me. Today I want to tell you a story about trust, love, betrayal, and the quiet strength that grows from surviving the unbearable. It's a story that begins in a house that should have been filled with laughter but instead carried shadows I could never have imagined. I was a mother once, full of hope and dreams, believing my children were the very best parts of my life. My son, Jonathan, was a bright boy, charming, clever, and full of energy. He had a way of smiling that could light a room, a way of making you feel proud to be his mother. I was proud, too. I loved him beyond measure. I thought I knew him. Oh, how terribly wrong I was. The first time it happened, I didn't understand. I felt confused, scared, and ashamed in ways I couldn't explain. Jonathan was gentle and persuasive, convincing me it was normal, that it was our secret. I remember trembling, sitting on the edge of my bed, trying to make sense of the unthinkable. My own son. My child, how could someone I loved so dearly become the source of my deepest pain? I told myself it was my fault. I questioned everything about myself, my choices, my love, and my devotion. I became silent, hiding behind smiles, behind warm dinners and the laughter I tried so hard to create for my family. Outside, I was the picture of a happy mother, the perfect woman everyone envied. Inside, I was breaking, 1,000 pieces scattered in a room no one could see. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the fear never left. I carried it like a secret stone in my chest, weighing me down. I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Who could I trust? My world had shifted, and I had no map to navigate it. Each time he looked at me with that innocent smile, I recoiled, and yet, I was trapped by love, by fear, by shame. I learned to live in shadows. Every smile I gave, every kind word I spoke, carried a weight of pain no one could see. My home, once my sanctuary, became a place of quiet dread. I tiptoed around Jonathan, careful with every glance, every word, every step. I became an expert at pretending, hiding the cracks behind a facade of warmth and love. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one night, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea, feeling its warmth seep into me, trying to fill the emptiness inside. My husband was away on business, leaving the house quiet, the perfect silence for fear to grow. I thought about the child I had raised, the boy who held my heart, and yet had broken it in ways no one should ever endure. I cried then, softly, letting the tears fall onto the tabletop, onto the untouched plate of dinner I had made. I whispered into the empty room, words meant for no one but the walls. How did we get here, my sweet boy? How did I fail so completely? There was no answer, only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock marking time I wished I could rewind. I began to see the signs, the way he watched me, the way he lingered too long, the way his charm masked something darker. I had been blinded by love, by hope, by a mother's trust. And now, the very hands I had held as a child, the eyes I had kissed as he fell asleep, were the ones that caused me the deepest wounds. Yet, in the midst of the pain, I began to find fragments of strength. Small acts, like standing up when he demanded too much, leaving the room when fear whispered too loudly, locking doors when the world felt unsafe, these were my shields, my tiny victories. Each one reminded me that I could survive, that I could endure. I began to journal in secret, scribbling words in the dead of night. Each sentence, a lifeline thrown into the storm. I will not let this destroy me, I wrote. I am more than fear. I am more than shame. I am a woman, a mother, and I deserve to survive. The pen became my confidant, the paper my sanctuary. In those moments, I reclaimed a piece of myself. I also started planning. Not revenge, not confrontation, not yet, but survival. I began quietly organizing my life, my finances, my independence. I reached out to friends under false pretenses, calling them for advice on mundane things, planting seeds of support in case I needed them one day. I began to understand the power of preparation, the strength of a safety net. At night, when Jonathan thought I was asleep, I would sit in my room and breathe, counting each inhale, each exhale, grounding myself in reality, reminding myself that I was still here, still alive. And slowly, amidst the terror, I began to rebuild a sense of self I thought had been lost forever. I will not lie, there were moments of warmth amidst the darkness. A smile from a friend, a phone call from someone who noticed I was struggling, a memory of happier times with my children before fear entered our home. These were my tiny rays of hope. They reminded me that life was not entirely cruel, that light could exist even in the darkest corners. I also noticed my resilience growing. Each act of courage, no matter how small, strengthened me. Standing up for myself in subtle ways, asserting boundaries, locking doors, and even leaving the house when I needed air, all of it built a quiet, unyielding strength inside me. I began to believe that I could survive, that I could reclaim my life. One evening, after years of silent suffering, I realized I could no longer live under the shadow of fear. I needed to act, to protect myself, to reclaim the life I had been denied. I began researching, quietly, secretly, gathering information about resources, hotlines, shelters, legal options. I discovered that I was not alone, that women and mothers like me had survived, had rebuilt, had found freedom. The decision was terrifying. Leaving would mean exposing truths I had hidden for so long. But staying meant the slow erosion of my soul. I knew that I had to step into the unknown, into danger, into uncertainty, in order to survive. And for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope, not naive hope, but the kind that comes from knowing that survival is possible, that I could take back my life. The morning I decided to take control of my life, I woke with a strange mixture of fear and determination. I packed a small bag with essentials, keeping it hidden beneath the bed. Every sound in the house made my heart race, but I reminded myself that I was no longer the same woman who had silently suffered for years. I was a survivor, and I had a plan. I called a close friend under the guise of needing advice about a trivial matter. In reality, I was laying the groundwork for my escape. She listened patiently, offering support without ever suspecting the truth. I promised myself that I would reveal everything only when it was safe, when the danger had passed. Until then, I relied on stealth, strategy, and the quiet strength that had grown within me. As I prepared, I reflected on the years of pain, the stolen innocence, the nights of fear and despair. But instead of breaking me, those memories became fuel. They were a reminder of what I had endured, of how resilient I truly was. Each heartbeat, each breath, each trembling step forward was an act of courage. For years, my voice had been silenced, replaced by whispers of fear and compliance. But now, it began to return, timidly at first, then with growing confidence. I spoke to myself in the mirror, repeating affirmations I had learned from books and counseling articles. I am strong. I am worthy. I deserve safety. I deserve peace. Even the smallest acts of speaking my truth felt revolutionary. Asking a shopkeeper for help, calling a service line, asserting my needs in mundane daily interactions, all of it reminded me that I had power over my own life. Each word spoken was a reclamation of self, a quiet rebellion against the years of oppression and trauma. I knew I could not face this alone. I reached out to professionals who understood abuse, who had seen women like me survive and reclaim their lives. I built a network of support. Counselors, lawyers, and advocates who believed in the right to safety and dignity. They helped me plan meticulously, ensuring that my path to freedom would be as secure as possible. I also began connecting with other survivors online. Their stories mirrored my own in so many ways, yet their triumphs inspired me. I realized that I was not isolated, not powerless, and that together, we could transform pain into resilience, fear into courage. The night I left, the house felt heavier than ever. Each creak of the floorboards, each shadowed corner, reminded me of the years of fear I had endured. But I moved quietly, with precision and resolve. I carried my bag, my documents, and the few items that mattered most. Every step out the door was an act of defiance, a declaration that I would no longer be controlled by fear. I didn't look back. I didn't give space for doubt. The streets were empty, the night air crisp, and I breathed deeply, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. For the first time in decades, I felt the taste of freedom. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and beautiful all at once. I arrived at a safe house, a place where survivors were welcomed and protected. I was greeted with warmth and understanding, a stark contrast to the coldness I had known for so long. For the first time, I could cry openly, release years of pain, and speak my truth without fear. Therapy began, slowly peeling away the layers of trauma, replacing them with understanding, compassion, and strategies to live fully again. I learned that healing was not linear, but every day brought small victories, sleeping without fear, laughing without guilt, reclaiming hobbies and passions that had been buried beneath survival. Even in the safety of the shelter, memories haunted me. Each time I closed my eyes, the past replayed in vivid detail, every word, every touch, every stolen moment of my dignity. It was exhausting, but I reminded myself that these were the ghosts of a life I had survived. They could not define me anymore. I started journaling, writing letters I would never send, pouring out every emotion that had been trapped inside for decades. Anger, sorrow, shame, and fear all spilled onto the page. With each word, I felt lighter. I realized that confronting these shadows was not weakness, it was the foundation of my strength. One of the hardest lessons was learning to trust again. Even simple interactions made my heart race. Did this person see me as weak? Would they betray me? Slowly, through kind gestures and steady support, I began to see that not everyone carried malice. There were people who would listen, who would stand by me, who would protect me without judgment. I discovered that trust is not given blindly, it is earned, piece by piece. And as I began to trust, I found joy in connections I had thought impossible, friendships, laughter, and the warmth of shared understanding. Creating a space that felt like my own was liberating. I decorated a small apartment with colors and textures that soothed me. I kept photos of nature, books that inspired hope, and small objects that reminded me of resilience. Every corner reflected a life I was reclaiming for myself. Even mundane routines, cooking, cleaning, watering plants, became acts of empowerment. I was no longer just surviving. I was living, fully and intentionally. One day, I realized I wanted to help others. My experiences, though painful, had given me insight that could guide someone else out of darkness. I began volunteering at support groups, sharing my story with caution and care. The act of helping others was healing. Each time a survivor told me they felt seen, or that my words gave them hope, I felt a warmth I had never known. My pain had transformed into purpose. Eventually, I took the step to legally protect myself. I sought restraining orders and consulted lawyers to ensure safety from the person who had caused me so much harm. It was terrifying to face the system, to confront the reality of what had happened, but I was stronger now. Each legal document signed, each court date attended, was another brick in the foundation of my freedom. I was no longer powerless, I was a woman who had endured, survived, and was reclaiming her life. It was a small moment, a sunrise, a cup of tea, a gentle laugh. That reminded me life could be beautiful again. I allowed myself to feel happiness, not as a reward, but as a right. I learned that joy is not a betrayal of pain, it is a testament to resilience. I began exploring hobbies I had abandoned, taking walks in nature, painting, reading, and even dancing when the music moved me. Life was full of textures, colors, and sensations I had long forgotten. Through therapy and community, I learned that healthy relationships were possible. I met people who respected boundaries, celebrated strengths, and offered genuine care. Love became something nurturing rather than frightening. I built friendships that were honest and supportive, relationships that honored my autonomy and celebrated who I had become. For the first time, I felt that I could trust others without fear of exploitation. Looking back, I marveled at my own strength. The child I had once been, trapped in fear, had grown into a woman who reclaimed her narrative. The years of pain had shaped resilience, empathy, and determination. I realized that survival was not enough, I had transformed my suffering into power, and that power was mine forever. With time, I discovered that peace was not the absence of memories, but the acceptance of them. The nightmares still came occasionally, but I had learned to meet them with compassion for myself. I reminded myself, I am not the sum of what was done to me, I am everything I chose to become afterward. I practiced mindfulness, meditation, and quiet reflection. I would sit in my sunlit living room, listening to the wind rustle the trees outside, and I felt a calm I had never known as a child. Every breath became a small victory, a claim to my own life. Eventually, I felt a calling to share my journey, not in lurid detail, but as a story of survival, resilience, and hope. I began speaking at gatherings, writing articles, and even recording voice notes for online support communities. The first time someone messaged me, saying, "Your story gave me courage to speak up," tears filled my eyes. My pain had found purpose. My life, once overshadowed by trauma, was now a beacon for others navigating their own darkness. Forgiveness was the most difficult lesson. I did not forgive to absolve the person who hurt me, but to free myself from the prison of anger and bitterness. I forgave the past in my own heart, acknowledging the pain while refusing to let it dictate my future. It was a slow process, a journey without a timeline. Some days were harder than others, but with each act of forgiveness, I felt lighter, more human, and more capable of love and empathy. Now, years later, I am no longer the frightened girl who hid in shadows. I am a woman who embraces life, who loves freely, who seeks joy without hesitation. The trauma I endured does not vanish, but it no longer controls me. I plant flowers in my garden, laugh with friends, and hold close the moments of tenderness and beauty life offers. I am a survivor, a guide, a storyteller. And every time I share my story, I honor the child I once was, and the woman I have become. Life is not defined by what we suffer, but by how we rise afterward. And I rise, every day, with courage, with grace, and with love.